qualities that she will actually beautify the ornaments she wears. Her name will be Archie. In the future, she will accept King Pritu as her husband. Wow, that's good. Text number 6. In the form of King Pritu, the Supreme Personality Godhead has appeared through a part of his potency to protect the people of the world. The goddess of fortune is the constant companion of the Lord, and therefore she has incarnated partially as Archie to become King Pritu's queen. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that whenever one sees an extraordinary power, he should conclude that a specific partial representation of the Supreme Personality Godhead is present. There are innumerable such personalities, but not all of them are direct Vishnu Tattva plenary expansions of the Lord. Many living entities are classified among the Shakti Tattvas. Such incarnations empowered for specific purposes are known as Shaktavasha avatars. King Pritu was such a Shaktavasha avatar of the Lord. Similarly, Archie, King Pritu's wife, was a Shaktavasha avatar of the goddess of fortune. Harivilas. Text number 7. See here. Text numbers. The great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Viduraji, at that time, all the Brahmanas highly praised and glorified King Pritu, and the best singers of Gandharvaka Loka chanted his glories. The inhabitants of Siddha Loka showered flowers, and beautiful women in the heavenly planets danced in ecstasy. Text number 8. The conch shells, bugles, drums, and kettle drums. Hey, that's one thing we don't have. We don't have a kettle drum. We should get one.
Kettle drum.
Yeah. They make a lot of noise. Conch shells, bugles, drums, and kettle drums vibrated in outer space. Great sages, forefathers, and personalities from the heavenly planets all came to Earth from various planetary systems. Well, they don't do that much anymore. They don't really come. The Devatas don't come to Earth that much anymore because there's no good prasadam for them. Okay, text 9 and 10. Lord Brahma, the master of all the entire universe, arrived there, accompanied by all the demigods and their chiefs. Seeing the lines of Lord Vishnu's palm on King Pritu's right hand, and impressions of lotus flowers on the soles of his feet, Lord Brahma could understand that King Pritu was a partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one whose palm bears the sign of a disc, as well as other such lines, should be considered a partial representation or incarnation of the Supreme Lord. I'm looking at my palm right now, but it doesn't look like that. It doesn't look right as it says. It does. I don't see the sign of a disc, as well as other such lines. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There is a system by which one can detect an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nowadays, it has become a cheap fashion to accept any rascal as an incarnation of God. But from this incident, we can see that Lord Brahma personally examined the hands and feet of King Prithu for specific signs. In their prophecies, the learned sages and Brahmanas accepted Prithu Maharaja as a plenary partial expansion of the Lord. During the presence of Lord Krishna, however, a king declared himself Vasudeva, and Lord Krishna killed him as Pundraka. Before accepting someone as an incarnation of God, one should verify his identity according to the symptoms mentioned in the. Without these symptoms, the pretender is subject to be killed by the authorities for pretending to be an incarnation of God. Well, there's a lot of people we have to kill nowadays. It's too many incarnations of God. Text 11. The learned Brahmanas were very attached to the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, then arranged for the king's coronation. People from all directions collected all the different paraphernalia for the ceremony. Thus, everything was complete. Text number 12. All the rivers, seas, hills, mountains, serpents, cows, earth, birds, animals, heavenly planets, the earthly planet, and all other living entities collected various presentations according to their ability to offer the king. Text 13. Thus the great King Prithu, exquisitely dressed with garments and ornaments, was coronated and placed on the throne. The king and his wife Archie, who was also exquisitely ornamented, appeared exactly like fire. Text 14. The great sage continued, my dear Vidura, and this is Maitreya, my dear Vidura, Kuvera presented the great King Prithu with a golden throne. Wow. The demigod Varuna presented him with an umbrella that constantly sprayed fine particles of water and was as brilliant as the moon. Wow, I want that umbrella. Text 15. The demigod of air, Vayu, presented King Prithu with two whisks or chamaras of hair. The king of religion, Dharma, presented him with a flower garland which would expand his fame. The king of heaven, Indra, presented him with a valuable helmet, and the superintendent of death, Yamaraja, presented him with a scepter with which to rule the world. A scepter is, I think, is some kind of a stick that you can, that has some powers to it. Scepter. Want to look that up? Scepter. Scepter. Scepter.
Scepter is a ceremonial staff or rod that is often a symbol of royalty, like the scepter or the king holding or the priest holding.
Okay.
It's a royalty, authority, or power. It's typically held by a monarch during official ceremonies like coronations, royal processions. Throughout the history, kings and queens in many cultures have used scepters as visible representation of their ruling power and divine right to govern.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Okay. The demigod of air, fire, presented King Prithu with two whisks or chamaras of hair. The king of religion, Dharma, presented him with a flower garland which would expand his fame. The king of heaven, Indra, presented him with a valuable helmet, and the superintendent of death, Yamaraj, presented him with a scepter with which to rule the world. So, what did we say this scepter is? It's like a stick.
It's a stick. Like even Queen Elizabeth, I think she used to have carry like this, along with
Okay.
the crown she has.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, text number 16. Lord Brahma presented King Prithu with a protective garment made of spiritual knowledge. Wow. Let me read that again. Lord Brahma presented King Prithu with a protective garment made of spiritual knowledge. Wow. Bharati, or Saraswati, the wife of Brahma, gave him a transcendental necklace. Lord Vishnu presented him with a Sudarshana disc, and Lord Vishnu's wife, the goddess of fortune, gave him imperishable opulences. In other words, opulences that can never be destroyed. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. All the demigods presented various gifts to King Prithu. Hari, an incarnation of the Supreme Personality Godhead, known as Upendra, in the heavenly planet, presented the king with a Sudarshana disc. It should be understood that this Sudarshana disc is not exactly the same type of Sudarshana disc used by the personality of Godhead, Krishna or Vishnu. Since Maharaj Prithu was a partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of course, I'm sorry, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, since Maharaj Prithu was a partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's power, the Sudarshana disc given to him represented the partial power of the original Sudarshana disc. Okay. Text 17. Lord Shiva presented him with a sword within a sheath marked with 10 moons, and his wife, the goddess Durga, presented him with a shield marked with 100 moons. The moon demigod presented him with horses made of nectar. Wow, I'd like to see that. Horses made with nectar. And the demigod, Vishwakarma, presented him with a very beautiful chariot. Text 18. The demigod of fire, Agni, presented him with a bow made of the horns of goats and cows. Wow. So that's a bow. So, okay, I got it. So there's a bow and arrow. Okay, so the bow has horns of goats and cows on it. The sun god presented him with arrows as brilliant as sunshine. Wow. The predominating deity of Loka presented him with slippers full of mystic power. Oh, wow, that's great. Slippers full of mystic power that probably you can fly through the air with them, maybe. The demigods from outer space brought him presentations of flowers again and again. Purport by this divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This verse describes that the king's slippers were invested with mystic powers. Paduke Yoga Mayayo. Thus, as soon as the king placed his feet in the slippers, they would immediately carry him wherever he desired. Yeah.
Wow.
I knew there was something special about the slippers. Mystic yogis can transfer themselves from one place to another whenever they desire. A similar power was invested in the slippers of King Prithu. Wow. Text 19. The demigods who always travel in outer space gave King Prithu the arts to perform dramas, sing songs, play musical instruments, and disappear at his will. The great sages also offered him infallible blessings. Wow. The ocean offered him a conch shell produced from the sea, produced from the ocean. Text 20. The seas, mountains, and rivers gave him room to drive his chariot without impediments. And a Sutta, a Magadha, and a Vandi offered offered prayers and praises. They all presented themselves before him to perform their respective duties. Text 21. Thus, when the greatly powerful King Prithu, the son of Vena, saw the professionals before him, to congratulate them, he smiled, and with the gravity of the vibrating sounds of clouds, he spoke as follows. Pritur Uvasha. King Prithu said, O gentle Sutta, Magadha and other devotee offering prayers and what's it? Magadha and other devotee offering prayers, the qualities of which you have spoken are not distinct in me. Why then should you praise me for all these qualities when I do not shelter these features? I do not wish for these words meant for me to go in vain, but it is better that they be offered to someone else. Wow, King Prithu is very, very humble. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The prayers and praises by the Sutta, Magadha, and the Vandi all explained the godly qualities of Maharaj Prithu, for he was a Shaktavasha incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because the qualities were not yet manifest, however, King Prithu very humbly asked why the devotees should praise him with such exalted words. He did not want anyone to offer. He did not want anyone to. He did not want anyone to offer him prayers or glorify him unless he possessed the real qualities of which they spoke. The offering of prayers was certainly appropriate, for he was an incarnation of Godhead. But he warned that one should not be accepted as an incarnation of the personality of Godhead without having the godly qualities. At the present moment, there are many so-called incarnations of the personality of Godhead, but these are merely fools and rascals whom people accept as incarnations of God, although they have no godly qualities. King Prithu desired that his real characteristics in the future might justify such words of praise, although there was no fault in the prayers offered. Prita Maharaj indicated that such prayers should not be offered to an unfit person who pretends to be an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 23. O gentle reciters, offer such prayers in due course of time, when the qualities of which you have spoken actually manifest themselves in me. The gentle who offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead do not attribute such qualities to a human being who does not actually have them. Okay. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Gentle devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead know perfectly well who is God and who is not. Non-devotee impersonalists, however, who have no idea what God is and who never offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are always interested in accepting a human being as God and offering such prayers to him. This is the difference between a devotee and a demon. Demons manufacture their own gods, or a devotee himself claims to be God. However, in the footsteps of Ravana and Hiranyakashipu, um, although King Prithu Maharaj was factually an incarnation of the Supreme Personality Godhead, he rejected those praises because the qualities of the Supreme Person were not yet manifest in him. He wanted to stress that one who does not actually possess these qualities should not try to engage his followers and devotees in offering him glory for them, even though these qualities might be manifest in the future. If a man who does not factually possess the attributes of a great personality engages his followers in praising him with the expectation that such attributes will develop in the future, that sort of praise is actually an insult. Here it is.
Yeah.
Too much of this going on. And actually, it's always an insult. Over, uh, over estimation of people. Uh, okay, so text 24. How could an intelligent man, competent enough to possess such exalted qualities, allow his followers to praise him if he did not actually have them? Praising a man by saying that if he were educated, he might have become a great scholar or a great personality is nothing but a process of cheating. A foolish person who agrees to accept such praise does not know that such words simply insult him. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So we're reading Canto 4, Chapter 15, verse number 24, and the purport. Prita Maharaj was an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of God. As Lord Brahma and other demigods had already testified when they had presented the king with many heavenly gifts, because he had just been presented to the king with many heavenly gifts, because he had just been coronated. However, he could not manifest his godly qualities in action. Therefore, he was not willing to accept the praise of the devotees. So-called incarnations of Godhead should therefore take lessons from the behavior of King Prithu. Demons without godly qualities should not accept false praise from their followers. Okay, that's true. As a person with a sense of honor and magnanimity, does not like to hear about his abominable actions. A person who is very famous and powerful does not like to hear himself praised. Text 26 and the final verse of this chapter. King Prithu continued, my dear devotees, headed by the sutta. Just now, I am not very famous for my personal activities because I done have not done anything praiseworthy you could glorify. Therefore, how could I engage you in praising my activities exactly like children? Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the fourth canto, 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled King Prithu's Appearance and Coronation. Wow. All right. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the fourth chapter, fourth canto, 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled King Prithu's Appearance and Coronation. Okay. Now we go to chapter 16, Praise of King Prithu by Professional Reciters. Text number 1. Maitreya Uvacha Iti Bhuvanam Nripatim Kayaka Munikodita Tustuvus Tusta Manasas Tadvat Amrita Sevaya. The great sage Maitreya continued, while King Prithu thus spoke, the humility of his nectarian speeches pleased the reciters very much. Then again, they continued to praise the king highly with exalted prayers, as they had been instructed by the great sages. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here, the word Muni Kodita indicates instructions received from great sages and saintly persons. Although Maharaj Prithu was simply enthroned on the royal seat and was not at that time exhibiting his godly powers, the reciters like the Sutta and the Magadha and the Vandi understood that King Prithu was an incarnation of God. They could understand this by the instructions given by the great sages and learned brahmanas. We have to understand the incarnations of God by the instructions of authorized persons. We cannot manufacture God by our own concoctions. As stated by Narottam Das Thakur, Sadhu Shastra Guru, one has to test all spiritual matters according to the instructions of saintly persons, scriptures, and the spiritual master. The spiritual master is one who follows the instructions of his predecessors, namely the sadhus or saintly persons. A bona fide spiritual master does not mention anything not mentioned in the authorized scriptures. Ordinary people have to follow the instructions of sadhu, shastra, and guru. Those statements made in the shastras and those made by the bona fide sadhu or guru cannot differ from one another. Reciters like the suttas and the Magadhas were confidentially aware of King Prithu. That King Prithu was an incarnation of the personality of Godhead. Although the king denied such praise because he was on that wet, although the king denied such praise because he was not at that time exhibiting his godly qualities, the reciters did not stop praising him. Rather, they were very pleased with the king, who, although actually an incarnation of God, was so humble and delightful in his dealings with the devotees. In this connection, we may note that previously in 4.15.21, it was mentioned that King Prithu was smiling and was in a pleasant mood while speaking to the reciters. Thus, we have to learn from the Lord or his incarnation how to become gentle and humble. The king's behavior was very pleasing to the reciters, and consequently, the reciters continued their praise and even foretold the king's future uh, uh, activities, as they had been instructed by the sadhus and sages. Text number 2. The reciters continued, Dear King, you are a direct incarnation of the Supreme Personality of God, Lord Vishnu. And by his causeless mercy, you have descended on this earth. Therefore, it is not possible for us to actually glorify your exalted qualities, activities. Although you have appeared through the body of King Vena, even great orators and speakers like Lord Brahma and other demigods cannot exactly describe the glorious activities of your lordship. Wow, it's a big statement. In this verse, the word Maya means by your causeless mercy. The Mayavadi philosophers explain the word Maya as meaning illusion or falseness. However, there's another meaning of Maya, that is causeless mercy. There are two kinds of Maya, Yoga Maya.
No, there's two kinds of Maya, Yoga Maya.
Okay, I'm sorry. There are two kinds of Maya, Yoga Maya and Mahamaya. Mahamaya is an expansion of Yoga Maya, and both these Mayas are different expressions of Lord's internal potencies. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord appears through his internal potencies, Atma Maya. We should therefore reject the Mayavada explanation that the Lord appears in a body given by the external potency, the material energy. The Lord and his incarnation are fully independent and can appear anywhere and everywhere by virtue of the internal potency, although born out of the so-called dead body of King Vena. King Prithu was still an incarnation of the Supreme Personality Godhead by the Lord's internal potency. The Lord can appear in any family. Sometimes he appears as a fish incarnation, Matsya Avatar, or a boar incarnation, Varaha Avatar. Thus, the Lord is completely free and independent to appear anywhere and everywhere by his internal potency. It is stated that Ananta, an, an incarnation of the Lord who has unlimited mouths, cannot reach the end of his glorification of the Lord, although Ananta has been describing the Lord since time immemorial. So, what to speak of demigods like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and others? It is said that the devotee, that the Lord is Shiva Purinchi Nutam, always worshipped by demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. If the demigods cannot find adequate language to express the glories of the Lord, then what to speak of others? Consequently, reciters like the Sutta and Magadha felt inadequate to speak about King Prithu. Wow. By glorifying the Lord with exalted verses, one becomes purified. Although we are unable to offer prayers to the Lord in an adequate fashion, our duty is to make the attempt in order to purify ourselves. It is not that we should stop our glorification because the demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot adequately glorify the Lord. Rather, as stated by Prahlada Maharaj, everyone should glorify the Lord according to his own ability. If we are serious and sincere devotees, the Lord will give us the intelligence to offer prayers properly. That's a good statement. The Lord will give us the intelligence to offer prayers properly. Text 3. Although we are unable to glorify you adequately, we nonetheless have a transcendental taste for glorifying your activities. We shall try to glorify you according to the instructions received from authoritative sages and scholars. Whatever we speak, however, is always inadequate and very insignificant. Dear King, because you are a direct incarnation of the Supreme Personality Godhead, all your activities are liberal and very laudable, praiseworthy, in other words. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. However expert one may be, he can never describe the glories of the Lord adequately. Nonetheless, those engaged in glorifying his activities, glorifying the activities of the Lord, should try to do so as far as possible. Such an attempt will please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya has advised all his followers to go everywhere and preach the message of Lord Krishna. Since this message is essentially Bhagavad Gita, the preacher's duty is to study Bhagavad Gita as it is, understood by disciplic succession and explained by great sages and learned devotees. One should speak to the general populace in accordance with one's predecessors, sadhu, guru, and shastras. This simple process is the easiest method by which one can glorify the Lord. Devotional service, however, is the real method, for by devotional service one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead with just a few words. Without devotional service, volumes of books cannot satisfy the Supreme. Even though preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement may be unable to describe the glories of the Lord, they can nonetheless go everywhere and request people to chant Hare Krishna. So that equals everything else. Text 4. The king, Maharaja Prithu, is the best amongst those who are following religious principles. As such, he will engage everyone in the pursuit of religious principles and give those principles all protection. He will also be a great chastiser to the irreligious and atheistic. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The duty of the king or the head of the government is described very nicely in this verse. It is the duty of the governmental head to see that people strictly follow a religious life. A king should also be strict in chastising the atheists. In other words, an atheistic or godless government should never be supported by a king or a governmental chief. That is the test of good government. In the name of secular government, the king or governmental head remains neutral and allows people to engage in all sorts of irreligious activities. In such a state, people cannot be happy despite all economic development. However, in this age of Kali, there are no pious kings. Instead, rogues and thieves are elected to head the government. But how can the people be happy without religion and God consciousness? The rogues exact taxes from the citizens for their own sense enjoyment. And in the future, the people will be so much harassed that, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, they will flee from their homes and country and take shelter in the forest. However, in Kali Yuga, democratic government can be captured by Krishna conscious people. If this can be done, the general populace can be made very happy. Okay, so that last statement is extremely profound because it's saying that if the devotees can uh, take over the reins of society uh, and and have a democratic government led or organized by the Krishna conscious people, the general populace can be made very happy. Many people will be happy if that can happen. Okay.
One question. So the devotees can also
Engage in politics.
is like
Yeah.
that the meaning?
Yes. Yeah.
But politics, Maharaj, as you have explained in the past, is like about friends and enemies. So how a devotee will like in the government and in the politics, but yet he's like as a devotee. So how like Prabhupada is saying we should do it, but so
Prabhupada did. Right? He was a leader of the whole Hare Krishna movement. And so many different people joined the movement from all different countries, all different religions. Uh, and that's why it says the test of good government. In the name of secular government, the king or governmental head remains neutral and allows people to engage in all sorts of irreligious activities. In such a state, people cannot be happy despite all economic development. However, in this age of Kali, there are no pious kings. Instead, rogues and thieves are elected to head the government. But how can the people be happy without religion and God consciousness? The rogues exact taxes from the citizens for their own sense enjoyment. And in the future, the people will be so much harassed that, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, they will flee from their homes and country and take shelter in the forest. However, in Kali Yuga, democratic government can be captured by Krishna conscious people. If this can be done, the general populace can be made very happy. So we shouldn't give up. Here's Prabhupada saying, if we can do this, then the general populace can be made very happy. Yeah. This king, this is text 5, this king alone in his own body will be able in due course of time to maintain all living entities and keep them in a pleasant condition by maintaining himself as different demigods to perform various departmental activities. Thus, he will maintain the upper planetary system by inducing the populace to perform Vedic sacrifices. In due course of time, he will also maintain this earthly planet by discharging proper rainfall. Wow, that's interesting. Discharging proper rainfall. Okay. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The demigods in charge of the various departmental activities that maintain this world are but assistants to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When an incarnation of Godhead descends onto this planet, demigods like the sun god, the moon god, or the king of heaven, Indra, all join him. Consequently, the incarnation of Godhead is able to act for the departmental demigods to keep the planetary portions in order. The protection of the earthly planet is dependent on proper rainfall. And as such, in Bhagavad Gita, the other scriptures, sacrifices are performed to please those demigods who are in charge of rainfall. Anad bhavanti bhutani parjanyad anasambhava yajnad bhavati parjanyo yajna karma samudbhava. All living entities subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna or sacrifice, and yajna. And yajna is born of prescribed duties. Bhagavad Gita 3:14. Thus, the proper execution of yajnas, sacrifice, is required. As indicated herein, King Prithu alone would induce all the citizens to engage in such sacrificial activities so that there would not be scarcity or distress. In Kali Yuga, however, in the so-called secular state, the executive branch of government is in charge of so-called kings and presidents, who are all fools and rascals. In the discharge of so-called fool and access one. So they should just give up all other activities and become devotees. Thus, the proper execution of yajna, sacrifice, is required. As indicated herein, King Prithu alone would induce all the citizens to engage in such sacrificial activities so that there would not be scarcity or distress. In Kali Yuga, however, in the so-called secular state, the executive branch of government is in the charge of so-called kings and presidents who are all fools and rascals. Ignorant of the intricacies of nature's causes, the ignorant of the principles of sacrifice. I'm sorry. Let's see. In the so-called secular state, the executive branch of government is in charge of so-called kings and presidents who are all fools and rascals, ignorant of the intricacies of nature's causes and ignorant of the principles of sacrifice. Such rascals simply make various plans which always fail, and the people subsequently suffer disturbances. To counteract this situation, the Shastras advise Harinama, Harinama, Harinameva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatarangata. Thus, in order to counteract this, the unfortunate situation in government, The general populace is advised to chant the Mahamantra. Here, the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we don't have to have a revolution. We don't need guns. We don't need tanks. We need chanters of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That's what we do. Every night now we chant. Every day we chant also. Chapter 6. This King Prithu will be as powerful as the sun god. Just as the sun god equally distributes his sunshine to everyone, King Prithu will distribute his mercy equally. Similarly, just as the sun god evaporates water for 8 months and during the rainy season returns it profusely, this king will also exact taxes from the citizens and return these these monies in times of need. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The process of tax exaction is very nicely explained in this verse. Tax exaction is not meant for the sense gratification of the so-called administrative heads. Tax revenues should be distributed to the citizens in times of need. During emergencies such as famine or flood, tax revenues should never be distributed among governmental servants in the form of high salaries and various other allowances. In Kali Yuga, however, the position of the citizens is very horrible because taxes are enacted in so many forms and are spent for the personal comforts of the administrators. The example of the sun in this verse is very appropriate. The sun is many millions of miles away from the earth. And although the sun does not actually touch the earth, it manages to distribute land all over the planet by exacting water from the ocean and seas. And it also manages to make that land fertile by distributing water during the rainy season. As an ideal king, King Prithu would execute all his business in the village and state as exactly as expertly as the sun. So the king is going to distribute, let's say, what is needed for people to be happy, just like the sun gives its heat and light for the benefit of all people. Text 7. This King Prithu will be very, very kind to all citizens, even though a poor person may trample over the king's head by violating the rules and regulations. The king, out of his causeless mercy, will be forgetful and forgiving. As a protector of the world, he will be as tolerant as the earth itself. Well, yeah, everyone stamps the earth or walks on the earth never complains. Purport. King Prithu is herein compared to the earthly planet as far as his tolerance is concerned. Although the earth is always trampled upon by men and animals, it still gives them food to them by producing grains, fruits, and vegetables. As an ideal king, Maharaj Prithu is compared to the earthly planet, for even though some citizens might violate the rules and regulations of the state, he would still be tolerant and maintain them with fruits and grains. In other words, it is the duty of the king to look after the comforts of the citizens, even at the cost of his own personal con- conveniences, conveniences, yes, even at the cost of his own conveniences. This is not the case, however, in Kali Yuga, for in Kali Yuga, the kings and heads of state enjoy life at the cost of taxes enacted from the citizens. Such unfair taxation makes the people dishonest, and the people try to hide their income in so many ways. Eventually, the state will not be able to collect taxes and consequently will not be able to meet its huge military and administrative expenses. Everything will collapse and there will be chaos and disturbance all over the state. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, we'll read one more verse. Text number 8. When there is no rainfall and the citizens are in great danger due to scarcity of water, this royal personality of Godhead will be able to supply rains exactly like the heavenly King Indra. Thus, he will very easily be able to protect the citizens from drought. Right. Okay, so that's when you have a saintly king like King Prithu. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. King Prithu is very appropriately compared to the sun and the demigod Indra. King Indra of the heavenly planets is in charge of distributing water over the earth and other planetary systems. It is indicated that King Prithu would arrange for the distribution of rainfall personally if Indra failed to discharge his duty properly. Sometimes the king of heaven, Indra, would become angry at the inhabitants of the earth if they did not offer sacrifices to appease him. King Prithu, however, being an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, did not depend on the mercy of the heavenly king, meaning Indra. It is foretold herein that if there would be a scarcity of rain, King Prithu would manage to counteract the deficiency by virtue of his godly powers. Such powers were also exhibited by Lord Krishna when he was present in Vrindavan. Indeed, when Indra poured incessant water on Vrindavan for 7 days, the inhabitants were protected by Krishna, who raised Govardhan Hill over their heads as a great umbrella. Thus, Lord Krishna is also known as Govardhana Dari. Yeah, Govardhana Dari is able to lift uh, a gigantic hill to act as an umbrella. So therefore, Dari means powerful. He's Govardhana Dari. Okay, so I think we'll stop right there. Text number 9. And if there are any questions, you can ask it now. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thanks for the wonderful lecture today. Maharaj, I wanted to ask that Srila Prabhupada says that the Kali Yuga, the government is going to be, mostly in the hands of the wrong people, right? That is a possibility. So is it like, should we consider as predestined that Kali Yuga is going to deteriorate like this? Or is there a chance, is it fatalistic, or is there a chance that it might revive and get better because of the Krishna consciousness increasing? Like that.
Well, that's why Prabhupada established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, so that devotees should act very responsibly as good messengers of Krishna's mercy and help people uh, uh, attain Krishna consciousness and make the planet purified. Uh, the whole idea is that people become corrupted by false kings and other so-called enlightened avatars. They're just basically rascals. So Srila Prabhupada himself gave the example of a bona fide king. He was always dedicated to helping people become Krishna conscious. And he was willing to sacrifice everything of it, like his own material happiness and benefits, in order to raise the consciousness of the society by his books and by the organization of the Hare Krishna movement, which is basically uh, made for spreading the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra all over the world. So Prabhupada was a messenger of Krishna, helping people become Krishna conscious in this modern age. And the best way to become Krishna consciousness is to take up the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and giving up all bad qualities or practices such as meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, and intoxication, and always engaging in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So what Prabhupada did is a miracle. He did what exactly his Guru Maharaj was teaching him to do. And Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur was a Shaktavish avatar himself, and he and his father, of course, were did everything to eliminate the nonsense people who were misleading the public and engage in activities that were beneficial for Krishna consciousness of the people. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the edifice of the base of this organization, and his son Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur began to spread it and organize it and spread it, and then Prabhupada completed the spreading of it all over the world. So we should have great respect and love for these very special people, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada. They reestablished on very solid, let's say, base the Krishna consciousness movement. And Prabhupada was able to spread it all over the world. So now we have a big responsibility, at least to maintain what Prabhupada did. Even if we're not able to increase, at least we should maintain what Prabhupada gave us. Right? And then if someone has the blessing of Lord Krishna, he'll be able to increase it also. But and our responsibility is to maintain what Prabhupada has given. Okay, so I think we'll stop right there unless there are any more questions.
Takeaway, Maharaj.
Huh?
Takeaway for today.
The takeaway for today. Okay, the takeaway for today is King Prithu was very, very kind to all citizens, even though a poor person may trample over the king's head by violating the rules and regulations. The king, out of his causeless mercy, will be forgetful and forgiving. As a protector of the world, he will be as tolerant as the earth itself. Well, you see, that's a real, let's say, leader of society. He's, as it says here, King Prithu will be very, very kind. So there's two verys there to all citizens, not just a part of the citizenry, to all citizens. Even though a poor man may trample over the king's head by violating the rules and regulations, the king, out of his causeless mercy, will be forgetful and forgiving. See, that's the position of a pure devotee. He's forgetful and forgiving. Prabhupada did that too. There were devotees that did terrible things, up to the point even of trying to destroy Prabhupada and his Hare Krishna movement. There were some devotees like that. But he always forgave and forgot what they did and encouraged them to continue in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, there was one attempt by four devotees to sequester Prabhupada, in other words, like put him in a jail, not a real jail, but in sequester him in his room so he couldn't communicate with the devotees, and the devotees couldn't communicate with him, and they virtually wanted to take over the movement. But eventually they failed, and Prabhupada forgave them. See. So therefore, that's why it says here, this King Prithu will be very, very kind to all citizens. Even though a poor person may trample over the king's head by violating the rules and regulations, the king, out of his causeless mercy, will be forgetful and forgiving. As a protector of the world, he will be as tolerant as the earth itself. That's a description of Prabhupada. We don't have time to explain things. I could tell you so many experiences where devotees try to take over the movements of Krishna consciousness and make Prabhupada like a prisoner. And it failed. Yeah, okay, for a short period of time, it sort of succeeded, but then it failed. And Prabhupada forgave them, even though what they did was really nasty. So that's a pure devotee. Why? Because pure devotee will always be protected by the mercy of Krishna, even in the most dire, difficult situations. Okay, so we'll stop right there. And please have a very good day today. Chant your rounds, all 16 of them. And of course, that's the minimum. You can chant more rounds and be happy. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Mahamantra ki jai. Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol. Okay. Today is the 8th of April, right? April 8th?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes, Maharaj.
Good.